So one of the hardest things when looking at Christopher Columbus and the New Testament, right, and just the Bible in general, right, we are a prehistoric people, right? So we predate the period of time where written record existed to document. And part of the reason of that is because when you understand the locales, you understand that in the beginnings, right, Genesis 1 and 14, there was a distinct division, right, of seasons and times. So when we look at rulership, a lot of times we forget what a ruler is in our existence, right? And when we understand what a ruler is, it's a measuring, right? So a ruler, and we talk about these things about the measuring of the temple and the measuring of man, and the making of man. And when we look at the earth and the Most High saying He's perfect, we have to understand a whole, right? A whole is one, right? To make a whole, we're talking about a circle. So the existence always has been known as the circle. And so one of the interesting things is when you see, look at in this Christopher Columbus Book of Prophecies and looking at the New Testament and looking at the scriptures. Here I went out here and I drew out some things and showing the connection between really understand that the Americas, right? The Americas, Americas, the home of the sun, right? Truly have to understand, like I was saying, the divisions and the measurements of the earth, right? This 360 degrees, it's 4 seasons, right? So we are talking about a whole being divided into equal, right? Into equality, right? That's what, we're talking about the seasons, the dividing of the time. It's balance. It keeps it duality, duat, day and night, right? So if it's a hemisphere, and you got 4 directions, you do the math. You start to really visualize what you are learning or what you are deciphering. Draw it out yourself. Understand that this is a matrix, right? A metrics. Understand matrix, metrics. Matrix, the womb, right? Understand matrix, the womb, and this existence that we dwell in, this revolution, right? We're talking about revolting, right? Understand the will, right? And the chronicling of the measuring of time, right? So this is how the dividing, the man had to be able to observe the procession of the sun, and man associated the procession of the sun with everything that existed in life, meaning from the will, right? The will, right? The understanding to know how to develop the will came from observation of watching the procession of the sun go through the 4 seasons and understanding the 4 changes that the earth goes through, right? We understand we're in the time of darkness. So understand the earth began in darkness, right? Darkness came before light, right? So when we understand darkness came before light, Christopher Columbus, I'm going to get into his readings here. It says, a letter from the admiral to the king and queen. It says, most Christian and very high princes, my argument for the restitution of the Holy Temple to the Holy Militant Church is the following. The very high priest is at a very early age. I went to sea and have continued to navigating until today. The art of sailing is favorable to anyone who wants to pursue knowledge of this world. Secrets, I have already been at the business for 40 years. I have sailed all the waters which up to now have been navigated. Right? I have had dealings with conversations with learned people. Look at the people he's saying: clergymen and laymen, Latins, Greeks, Jews, and Moors. All right, so understand Moors and mooring and seamanship. All right, and the Moors, and with many other sects, I found our Lord very well disposed towards my desire, and he gave me the spirit of intelligence. For it, he's prospered in me seamanship, and supplied with me the necessary tools of astrology, as well as geometry. Talk about astrology and geometry, right? Understanding the horizons, right? So understand once, 1492, after the expulsion of the Moors, right? The Portuguese had access. They already had came in the 15th century. Already had came across the Horn of West Africa and established, right, colonies off the coast of Africa. And during this expulsion, they were distributing the people that were the Moors, those that had the empire and the rulership in the Spanish and Portuguese land regions, into colonies in West Africa. Now, these are the Moors that were in Spain. So understand the knowledge that he was able to obtain from the universities in Valencia and things that took place. So when he's talking about the geometry and science and the navigation skills, it was the knowledge of this 360-degree hemisphere that allowed for the after the expulsion, for them to cross over into what they called the New World. Right? So the New World was the whole entire Western Hemisphere. So prior to 1492, they had no crossing. So he's saying here, Christopher Columbus is saying here, right, in his book, right, that the clergymen and the laymen and Latins, the Greeks and Jews and Moors, right, gave him the necessary tools of astrology, right, and geometry and arithmetic. So when you understand geometry and arithmetic, understand, right, this is the center. Understand circumference of a circle, right? Pi, or what they call a radius, right? So right here, from the center, from true north, what they call the northern star, you go here and you go to this point in the east. This is how you have a 90-degree right triangle. Right, so this science and this information about being perpendicular, all of these sciences and geometry was helpful in his seamanship and supplied him the spirit of intelligence. Right, it says here, manual skill to draw spherical maps which show cities, rivers, and mountains, islands, ports, everything in its proper place. Because we understand that each quadrant, right, is a 90-degree angle. So this is why you have cities, right, named after in the same location. It's because they mirror, right, each other. The cities mirror each other, east and west, right? This is talking about a mirroring. So when you talk about Venus, we're talking about the mirror, the mirroring, right? You understand the alchemy that exists within Venus or the North Star. And it says, at this time I have seen and put study to look into all scriptures and cosmography, histories, chronicles, and philosophies, and other arts, which our Lord opened to my understanding. I could sense his hand upon me, so it became clear to me that it was feasible to navigate from here to the Indies. So we have to understand about the Indies is that it's the end of the day, right? So we talk about the end days, right? End times, end days. Understand end D's, right? Where the sun dies, the dead. Hebrew word mut, mu, right? The duat. Okay, so we're talking about the Indies. This is why there's a west and a east in these, right? So there's a west wing, east wing, right? So the west wing, which is the Karaba, the Caribbean, right? And you have, and then, where Ba Boricua, Bacara. I don't think I did that one right. But understand the Caribbeans, and when you look at the Caribbeans and the Arawak and the term canoe and ocean in the Greek, Kaianos, Okinos, understand the Pacific Ocean and the West Indies and the East Indies, right? So you have the West end of the day, right, which is the Atlantic. And then you have the east end of the day, which is the Pacific. So this is why you have the East Indies in the land of the Orient. In my book that I am working on, I go into a big amount of detail on these things. We're talking about the Orient, we're talking about the rising sun, the sprouting noon, the noon, right? The noon, the sprouting seed in Hebrew, right? So we talk about the noon in Hebrew. This is what we ancient. We want that ancient thing. So we're talking. All right. So we want that ancient thing. We're talking about that noon, right? So understand we're talking about the noon, the sprouting air, eternal life force. Your seed lives forever, right? So if you want to live forever, you need to have seed and plant seed, right? And produce fruit. So when you see the sprouting seed, understand the trees and the sprouting of all existence, right? Everything that exists that was created by what we call God or nature bears seed. So this is how it lives forever. So we talk about the first and the last, right? Understand the first, the head, right? Which is the East Indies, right? And the Ta, right? Which means mark, which is the region crossing from the West Indies into America, right? So this is why when you look in the Greek, right? And we talk about this is why a lot of us don't don't like the New Testament, because this is what the New Testament, how the New Testament be kind of playing games, right? Let me show you what I mean. So look at the New Testament. This is First Thessalonians 5:1. It says here, I'm just gonna read the first two verses of this New Testament. But of the time, so each one of these numbers, a lot of times people ask me what do these numbers mean. If you plan on buying my book or having one of my book, you're going to need a concordance and a dictionary, and you're going to have to be aware and use it as a study guide to be prepared to know what these things mean, what terms mean, because this is how things are hidden. It's hidden within the language. So talk about this Greek New Testament in the Greek language, right? So it says here in First Thessalonians, right? Now understand, here in California, we have a tribe called Aloni, right? And that being the mud from Mu, and Aloni, understand that's Alonians, right? It says, but of the times and the seasons, brethren, ye have no need that I write unto you. So understand the games that the Greek plays, because we understand people worship Christ, they have a need to be saved, right? So when you look at Christ and the Son, of being the Son of God, understand the times and the tracking of times. And understand the Greek, chronos. We're talking about Christ, talking about the crown, anointing one, right? The oil. When you look at the oils, called the mesh oil, right? From the crocodile, Sobek, right? You understand Shu, who is King Zapanat, which was in the Bible, Joseph, right? And him being the representation of the wind deity Shu, who holds up the sky, right? And understand where Jeshua, Yah, however you want to do it, salvation, right? The water, Shah, the heavens, right? So understand how language, we're talking about language and the power within language. Everything is hidden within the language. So this is why if you do want to get my book, you need to get a concordance if you don't have one, and a dictionary, and a thesaurus, so you can see how they hide the things with the language. So we're talking about time, right, and the ending of the day, the end days, why they call you a NDN, right? And end, you die, right? And this is how they distinguish foreign lands in the Greek. So why is the Bible misleading? Because language has duality. Is the main reason why the Bible is so misleading. It's not the Bible, it's language, right? So it's not necessarily the scriptures or that's misleading. It's the language, because the creation, we have what we call root words, right? And then prefixes and suffixes that can change the meaning of what the context of that word is, right? But the root of the word doesn't change. So a lot of the times of why the English language is confused, because like even like when I'm talking about day, right? So when we talk about day and die, it's the same. These are synonyms. These are the same thing, right? You understand the deity and sunset, right? The sun ending and the end of the day. You see how perception is deception. So just like this, right? So just like perception is deception. So just like I put a 6 and 9 here, right? Well, if you're sitting on, if I'm on this side and you're on that side, to you this is a 6. To me, this is a 9. To you, this is a 9. To me, this is a 6. So perception and interpretation, like you said, is also where the deception plays. So you have to know. This is why I say it's important to look at. You got to understand the prefix, the suffix, and the root, and look at the root, right? Because the root is what's going to tell you what that thing is, right? And then, yeah. So when we talk about um, the end days and in the ends, understand that we're talking about the land locale of the sun, the Hemera. Can you hear me now? So we're talking about Hemera, the ending day. So we're talking about the day. Let me show you what I'm talking about. Can you hear me now, or is it still unable to hear me? So it says, "But of the times and of the seasons, brethren, ye have no need that I write unto you. For ye yourselves know perfectly that in the day of the Lord, so cometh as a thief in the night." So you look at the day, like I was saying, it's talking about Hemera. The day is Hemera, which means the day used of the natural day or the interval between sunrise and sunset as distinguished from the contrast with the night. And okay, so this is talking about the 24-hour period of a day. Ora. So understand there's 12 hours or 12 hours in a day before it dies, the end of the day, right? So this is why when you look at the Nut, the goddess of the sky, all right, and you see, let me see if I can, let me see if I can get a picture. Well, the land is a plane, so by definition of a plane, it has to be on a plane. But this is there's 6 directions, right? So you have north, south, east, west. This is the plane. Now, while you're on a flat or plane, you still have you can go vertical. So that right there shows you that there is a top, right? An atmosphere. So the atmosphere is what makes up what we perceive to be what we would call a globe. So this is why a spear is associated with being the earth, because it was seen as a covering, right? The covering, and also there's a duat, so as above, so below. So there was also a below. So yes, so this is why. But the earth, I'm talking about the actual matter of the earth, is a plane. Um, and so this is. Let me see if I can find one to This is right here. The homie laying down right here is supposed to be Geb. Geb would be the earth or the mount. So we're talking about the earth. It's a womb, right? It's a matrix. So it's 360 degrees. So is it flat? 300 is round. 360 degrees is a circle. This is how we get pi and radius to know the whole. This is how Christopher Columbus in his writings is saying he knew how to circumnavigate after studying the scriptures. So in his writings, he tells you that he learned how to circumnavigate from studying the scriptures, because when you understand why, when you look here, and let's go to the book of Job, 26th chapter. So this is the book of Job. What about the planets then? Do you believe in astrology? Yes, I mean, you have to believe in astrology in order to chronicle time. I mean, how else could you track time? So let me show you what the scriptures say, so you can kind of see where my perspective is coming from, right? So when you look here at Job 26, right? It said, but Job answered and said, how hast thou helped him that is without power? How savest thou the arm that hath no strength? How hast thou counseled him that hath no wisdom? And how hast thou plentiful declared the things that it is? To whom hast thou uttered? So you look, understand, utter, and then the God and the serpents of the Nagas, right? And to acknowledge, and an omen, a messenger. So understand that, okay? So, and whose spirit came from thee? It says, dead things are formed from under the waters, and the inhabitants thereof, hell is naked before him, and destruction hath no covering. Destruction hath no covering, right? So we're talking about he stretched out the north. So you understand the north. The north is the hidden land, right? It's the darkness. So when we talk about the stars and astrology, we're talking about the Western Hemisphere. So yes, do we believe in astrology? This hemisphere of the New World was just that. This is why when Christopher Columbus came over here to the Indies to the end of the day, he became to realize that the information in the scriptures was already prevalent and present here in America, in the Americas, and the people here had knowledge of the functionalities of nature from the beginning to the end. See, the understanding of the sun and the circle, right, 360 degrees, is what allowed man to understand the whole duality that is existence from the beginning to the end, from before birth, pre-birth, right, and after death, right, the afterlife. This whole sequence was played out through the chronology of the time, chronos, of what took place, of the sun going from these four quarters, right? Because these four quarters are actually what we would call four archangels, right? To understand an arc, right? At 90 degrees, right? It's one archangel, two archangels, three archangels, four archangels. When I say angels, I mean angles. Angels, it's the same thing. They're messengers, they're eyes. They see in that perpendicular axis, right? So each quarter of the earth is a 25% of the vision that makes up the whole vision of the whole earth. So this is why when they during the dark ages, right? They called it the dark ages because they had no access to the light. And when you understand this Western Hemisphere and the hearing from the heavens, this is the land of hearing from the heavens, right? So this is what what Genesis 1 and 14 says. It says in God. So when you understand God, God means rulers. And when you understand what a ruler is, it's a measuring. It's a measuring, right? A metrics, a matrix. So you understand the measuring of a whole circumference of a circle, pi, and the sky, and the letter M, right, and the holding up of the sky, the North Star. Um, I mean, I'm gonna keep going into it, but yeah. It says here, this is back in Job about the land of the north. It said that he stretched out the north. You understand the land of the north in the Western Hemisphere, right? So you have California about right here in this region, Canada, and then you got Australia and all that about right here, Australia. And on this side right here, you have where the Hemera is, the space between day and night before the day comes, right? So the sun goes in this spiral, right? Chronicles in this spiral, right? And then when it hits this point, 1 day, 2 day, 3 day, 4 day, 5 day, 6 day. So it's not until it comes to this. So it rises first quarter, right? Second quarter, third quarter, fourth quarter, the ending of the day. So this is why it looks like the sun sets. It's the perception. The sun never sets. It just keep moving, keep doing and moving. You know what I'm saying? In this spiral. You hear me? But every time it crosses this point, that's the date. And that location is called the Hemera. And this is how you calculate, right? 6 hours. So it takes 6 hours for the sun. The sun moves at uh, the speed of 90 degrees per 6 hours. So from here to there, it takes the sun 6 hours, right? So from here to there, it takes the sun 6 hours. It's 180 degrees. That's a hemisphere. All right, so you see what a hemi, if anybody got a car and you got a hemi in your thing, that's probably how it's sitting, just like that, right? With the hood over it, right? So understand the hemi and understand the eastern hemisphere and the land of the sun, right? And the land of darkness, two Maors. All right, so when we see Most High said that he was gonna make two Maors, right? And God, this is Genesis 1:16. God made two great lights. So we look at the two great lights, like I always go over this as Maors, right? To rule. We'll talk about rule, dominion, a realm. You have to measure it. So how is each quarter measured? It's measured by the sun as it comes through each quarter. The sun is measuring through its ruling. Understand, rulers give you the measurements, right? Mem sa la, right? So, so we talk about, do I believe in astrology? Yes. You see here, it says God made the two great lights, right? And the greater light to rule the day, and the lesser light to rule the night. So when you look at Lael and a lesser light and Lul, understand when you go to Hawaii, right? I don't know if anybody ever been to a luau. Let's see. I spelled that wrong. So if you ever been to a luau, let's see here. Luau's usually occur at night, at least. All right, you see. So we're talking about this Western Hemisphere. We're talking about the land of Amaraka. You hear the raka? You hear that that's that raka. I better understand you. Wake up that kundalini. You know what I'm talking about? So they ain't hitting. I thought they was gonna be hitting. So we're talking about um, Hawaii. Understand this research in the luau, and the sunset, and the night, and the two Maoris. This one way too. They ain't hitting that either. I thought they. What they hitting that? Let's see. Let's see. There we go. Okay. This one look lit. So understand the luau, Lail in the night.
A luau is a must-see when you visit the islands of Hawaii. Not only can you learn about the history, but you can learn about the culture.
Oh, okay. Is that coming to America, my nigga?
So at a luau, you usually find different activities, games such as spear throwing.
Okay, so you look at the spear, understand striking, Ka'an. So when you understand Kane, Ka'an, eh, look, we understand Ka'an in the spear,
How we prepare the pig.
in the canoe, in the ocean, Kainos, Akanos, Kane and canoe, the Arawak, Ta'ano.
They feel that aloha spirit, that friendliness, that kindness, that whole essence of coming here as a guest, but leaving here as family.
So understand, West, when we talk about the land of darkness, right, and the night, and what night is. So talking about that luau, the staircase, the winding stair, the shaft, right? So we talking about that winding stair, just talking about the center, right? The axis mundi. We understand mundi, right? So Jacob's ladder. A lot of these, is the spiral step, the winding of the step, the fold back. So it said, and God made the greater light. When we look at the greater light, it just says, but we look at the greater, Gadol, great, loud. So we talk about loud in the sun, to rule. Just rule. I did that already. Over the day and the night. The La'ir. So you look at a luau, right? Use attaching curtains and hooks, a loop. Right, you see that? You see that? A loop. Understand about Amaraka and the Americas and the ancient lands, the prehistoric lands. Like it shows you here. Um, Go back. So it says here about night. I'm just showing you how powerful language is, because you gotta understand the Hebrew language speaks everything into existence. So it's saying here about this, the Lael, the Luau, right? Understand? When we look at the Luau, I was just showing you. Go back to him, see if they got it.
Aloha from Lahaina, Maui, Hawaii,
Okay.
and I found myself here
Lael,
at
we're
the
talking
Old
about
Lahaina
night.
Luau, and this is the most traditional, probably the most famous luau in all of Maui. So it's about a 3-hour
Maui.
event, and
Understand? They take it. So we're talking about the night, the sunset, the land of the sunset, Amuraka, the Indies. Like I told you, when you look at what they call an Indian, right? So it's the end of the day. In days. What happens at the end of the day? The sun dies. Sundays. You see how this English is? You see how it works? Sun dies. Sundays. In days. Alright? In the end. Understand luau, the night. The volcanoes. And the looping. The circle. The loop. So what's important to understand is that the Americas, right? This is why I had the spirit just got me writing this book, because I just have all this information and I'm just sitting on it, and I gotta get it on wax, get it on paper. So that's what I've been doing. I'm already about 40 pages in. Let me show y'all. Let me show y'all. Let me show y'all. But I got all kind of information, connections. This is just something I'm just sharing. I'm not even trying to really, you know what I'm saying, withhold all this information. I'm trying to share, you know. But you know, I didn't work it, man. I ain't been playing. That's all I've been doing. It's all me. Show y'all a little something. Hold on. All right. Let me show y'all something. Since we looking at Hawaii and K, I'll give y'all a little pre, you know what I'm saying, little sneak peek. Okay, let me get Shalom, shalom. Quick question. Did you know if you travel from Asia to America, you set the clock back 24 hours? Um, did you know that? Anybody, anybody know why? Okay. Let me What you think about Libya and the slave over there? Well, you look at the Treaty of Tripoli. Um, Look at the Marine team, right? I don't know if you ever paid attention to the Marine team, but it says from the halls of Montezuma, right, to the shores of Tripoli. So we talk about the slave trade. You know, what's there to say? You know what I'm saying? We in captivity over here. You know, being in prison, being the the, the school to prison pipeline is at an apex of, you know what I'm saying, of the rate of amount of youth, especially right now. I don't think people aware. They was aware how many women are being imprisoned, right? The for economic crimes, right? Fraud, scam, all these type of things, right? So I mean, it's never good, right? It's a business. I mean, if niggas ain't gonna go over there and be on some gangster shit, I mean, what's there really to say? You feel me? Niggas can't even not go to work. Anyway, so let me show y'all something real quick. Give y'all a little sneak peek about this book. So what we gotta understand is that there was two Egypts, right? There's always been two Egypts. There was two kingdoms, right? And when you look at the different crowns, there's a unification crown, right? And then there's what they call a him crown, right? Which is three. Understand what? Look up the definition of a mound, and you'll notice that that's what a him crown is. So when we talk about this pre-dynastic empire that existed here in America, we have to understand that before this is before the flood, before the deluge. So before we talk about Nimrod and the Tower of Babel and Cush and all of these things, you gotta understand um, that's recent. Niggas, yeah, right. Niggas can't stop slavery over here. You know what I'm saying? Niggas can't stop the police from gunning niggas down in the streets without being found guilty. So what niggas gonna do in Africa? You know what I'm saying? Like, I mean, I'm not saying nobody shouldn't do nothing. Nobody should speak on it. But at the end of the day, um, deliver thyself. You know what I'm saying? That's what the scriptures say. But show y'all just real quick what the scriptures say about showing that it shows a distinction between the two lands. All right. Um, this is Deuteronomy, right? Deuteronomy 11 in verse 10. So, like I was saying, there's two Egypts. So we gotta understand, um, you know, Libya and what we see over there. Um, we look at West Africa. For real, everybody keeps saying, let me they playing me, man. What about now? Is that any better? I hope that sounds better. But this is Deuteronomy 11 and 10, and this is just to show that there's two Egypts, right? It says, and like I was saying, when you understand that Narmer's palette is the pre-dynastic Egypt, right? During that prehistoric time, there was two Egypts, right? There was, and when you look at the Western Sunset Land, when you understand how the precession of the sun, and when you look at the ancient, the pre-dynastic times, and the text, it clearly shows, which in the book that I'm writing, that I'm coming out with, that's over there, which I'm gonna give y'all a little sneak peek. It's gonna explain. It says, this is Deuteronomy 11 and 10. It says, "For the land whither thou goest to possess." Right. So we're talking about this is a land that we're going to take possession of. Right. It's not as the land of Egypt from whence ye came out. So understand that. It says, "For the land whither ye go to possess." So understand, in the biblical historic King James Bible, there's a story about an Exodus. And in the Exodus, the children of Israel exit Egypt. Now, understanding that there's two Egypts, right? Because what you have to understand is from this exiting of Egypt, right? As the scripture said, it says, "For the land whither thou goest to possess it is not the land of Egypt." I'm gonna show you. I'm gonna show you right now. Like I was saying, when I'm talking about when I'm. Are you familiar with Nimrod or Narmer's palette, Ace? So when what I'm saying, I don't know what the other Hebrews that have mentioned that we was already over here, is that when you look at the mound building empire, this is a world empire. So when you look at this prehistoric empire, this is before the Bible, right? This is before the Bible. See, a lot of times Hebrew Israelites, they are so caught up on their tribe and understanding that um, they have a purpose, right? Because we've been, as a people, as a collective, we've been trodden down, we've been put underfoot. So when we start to come into this knowledge and we start to learn that we're Israelite, we think that's it. You be so juiced, you be like, damn, okay, I'm an Israelite, okay. You don't realize that the law, the commandments, was prior to Israel. A lot of times, a lot of Israelites think that Moses was the first one to handle and deal with the law, not understanding that there was a priesthood, not understanding that Moses' wife, who was a Midianite, was a Hebrew, and she had to do the circumcision of her own son because she was keeping the covenant of Abraham because it was the practice to do so. Also, her father was also a priest, so she had, you know what I'm saying, pops wasn't playing that shit. Um, but when you look at what I'm saying, let me give you an example about the law, is that the law, the commandments. First, understand the commandments, right, weren't written, right? They were heard, right? They were heard. This is why the Ten Commandments are glorified the way they are, because when you read in Exodus the 20th chapter and you go down, right, you see thou shalt not, right, and you understand that they were hearing thunder and lightning, right, and the niggas got scared because the lightning, right. Nature was how we associated sound, and created our alphabet was based on principles, because sound has to relate to objects and things within your environment for it to be universal. In order for me to correlate and speak with you, this is why understanding the four quadrants and understanding that each quadrant is equivalent. So this is why you have cities with the same names in every location. It's because of the this it's the equivalent in every quarter, so it's equal, right? So this is why you have a lot of places where it's like, oh yeah. When you look at Orion's belt, understand there's what 3 or 4 locations in the earth that have this connection. Understand the fourth one is underwater. So when you look at the underwater pyramids of Tokyo, understand did your intelligence decrease because of not increase, if anything, um, because it was just it was when you write what you reading, like it's more within you, like it's like, okay, so not only did I type, but I wrote it all out first, right? So it's like I'm going over the same all this information over and over and over and over and over again. I do follow him, but I don't. I hardly have time to. I've been so just into information. I don't have time to really. I seen some of his posts that people reposted, but my Instagram don't show me people's. Especially the people that's popping. I guess it don't pop up on my on my feed. So that's why I had opened up this second page. Um, but just to show, I just wanted to show y'all this too before. Um, I'm getting a whole lot topic. Y'all got me excited. Um, what's I going to say? Yeah, oh yeah, I was gonna show y'all about the two Egypts, right? But yeah, I don't in the law. Okay, yeah, the law. Um, Exodus 20. We gonna go there. All right. So this is Exodus 20 and 18. I hear you. I need to get on. I need to step my spoken word up. So when you look at Exodus 20 and 18, look at this. This is kind of funny to me when I read this. Um, uh, Check this out. This verse 22. Before I go back up, I'm gonna read verse 22 because this is funny to me every time I read it. It says, "And the Lord said unto Moses, Does okay? So if y'all see my page and y'all be like, damn, what do these numbers mean? Let me explain these to you. Okay, so like each word right here, and the Lord, that's related to that context right here, that number. That little phrase, and the Lord, is connected to that. So that's what these numbers mean. This is why concordance is important because a lot of the meaning is hidden in the language. Um, so this is what the Lord said, right? Notice how God spake all these words, saying, right? I am the Lord. Then you come down here, right? And the Lord, right? The self-existing one, right? Said unto Moses, Thus shalt thou say. When you look at say, guess what that means? Mm. So Amaraka, what the Nazi symbol? The Nazi symbol is another is also showing the circle as well. Um, this, the whole earth, if you will. It's all symbols of the whole. But so it says Amar. So when you look at America, understand that the vowels are interchangeable. So we talk about the land of the hearing, the land of the commandments of hearing the commandments, right? So Amaraka is to say to other, right? To answer, to command, promise. So we talk about the land of promise. We're talking about the promised land, Amaraka, what you possess as an inheritance, right? So this is why we was reading in that Deuteronomy, right? It mentioned that. Hold on, let me close out. I'm gonna open back up.